Alright, are all the judges ready? Timer? Alright. At the point where the United States and Russia's military are condoning the use of weapons that are indiscriminate killers, at the point where innocents are being unnecessarily slaughtered in modern warfare, and at the point where the technology exists that could prevent these unnecessary deaths, we really have no moral option but to upgrade to superior weapons that are available, that have been proven to be superior. That's really what was the heart of our case here, and that was conceded really essentially by the negative speaker in his last speech. He talked about a lot of technicalities, and I'll be addressing those in my speech for sure, but it's important to note that the heart of this issue here, that we are using terrible weapons that cannot be aimed in warfare. It's killing our own soldiers, it's killing civilians, and it's inciting jihadist hatred towards the United States. That fundamental issue was unaddressed by the negative speaker, and that we have a better weapon that can be aimed, that has been proven in Iraq to hasn't killed any civilians to date. That has been fundamentally conceded. He talked in the beginning of his 1AC about how his opening quote was about how possibilities versus actualities and how we can easily be distracted. I'd like to point out a couple realities that were proven in our 1AC that have not yet really been disproven by the negative team. Our first point of reality is that Russia is using weapons right now that fail 35% of the time, a 35% dud rate in Russia's cluster munitions. That was in our 1AC. Under justification 1 subpoint B was never refuted. The second point of reality is that we are using weapons right now that cannot be aimed. They are indiscriminate weapons. They cover the size of, each bomb covers the size of several football fields. We cannot even aim them. Piece of evidence real quick here from Jessica Corsi in 2009. Quote, cluster munitions spread dozens to hundreds of submunitions over a large area and leave many unexploded and still dangerous submunitions behind after each attack, which maim and kill anyone that comes across them, making them inherently indiscriminate, end quote, conceded by the negative team. Third point of reality is that we are inciting essentially terrorism. We are encouraging terrorism when we are using these weapons. When we use weapons that kill civilians, that we drop bombs that cover a huge scope of area and we don't even know who we're killing, whether we're killing the enemy or civilians, that is giving people a reason to hate the United States, to take drastic action against the United States, and it's hurting our national security. The fourth and final point of reality here is that there is a way to avoid all of these problems very easily by switching to sensor-fused munitions. Both the United States and Russia could easily upgrade. The negative team read no evidence saying sensor-fused weapons were bad, and we read pieces of evidence under justification 1 and 2, subpoint C. Both of those were specific to sensor-fused weapons, saying they were better. Let's move on now to the line-by-line argumentation, starting off with the criteria. They said we should look at the stock issues, and we agree. We're going to look at the stock issues. We believe we've shown you that there is a significant problem in the current system, and our plan is going to fix that problem. Let's move on now to his funding argument. He said how much money and where is it coming from? My first point under here is just to clarify from the Landmine and Cluster Munitions Monitor in 2010 estimated that getting rid of the U.S. stockpile would cost about $2.2 billion. Russia's stockpile is smaller than ours, but for the sake, we'll assume it's about a $2 billion cost per each country to get rid of our existing arsenals. My second response on where our funding is coming from is that we're not eliminating subsidies or anything strange for our funding. Our funding is just coming from where the government would normally get it from, the federal government's normal operating budget. This is how Congress works in the real world when a bill is presented and we're just following normal operating procedures, so no problem there. Let's move on to the issue of solvency. His first solvency point here was that there's other countries that use cluster munitions, and I have a couple of responses. My first response is that he never impacted this to our case at all. We never claimed to solve 100% of the problem. We said Russia and the United States are the two largest users of this weapon. If we can eliminate them using this weapon, that is a clear net benefit. That was really never impacted this argument to our case. My second response is again that we get rid of the two biggest users and exporters of cluster munitions. And this is really important if you keep in mind that we are the two largest exporters of cluster munitions. So if we get rid of the old ones, we are going to be able to sell them to other countries like we are right now. So it's going to have a trickle-down effect. Really, eventually, everybody is going to be upgraded. That's my third response. You can actually turn this argument as an advantage to our case because look what we're doing. We're having the two largest exporters of this weapon upgrade to a better weapon. So now we're going to be exporting. Not only are we using a better weapon, but when we sign trade deals with other countries, we're going to be exporting a better weapon that can be aimed and that doesn't kill civilians. So it's actually really a very broad advantage to our case here, a reason to vote affirmative. My fourth response to this argument, though, is that the United States can, by getting rid of these weapons, it can essentially encourage other countries to start to, like I said before, shift away to a better weapon. This piece of evidence is from Matthew Berger in 2010. He says, quote, by signing on, the U.S. could put pressure on the other large-scale users of cluster bombs, which have also not signed the treaty, such as Russia and China. If there was a policy review that included the full range of U.S. interests at stake, they would see that there is no reason to hold on to the threat of these munitions that most of the world has already banned, end quote. We see if the two largest users of this weapon say, look, it's killing our own military, it's hurting civilians, there's no reason to keep it, the rest of the world is going to listen and see, that actually makes sense, let's follow suit. This is really not a reason to vote negative. Let's move on to Sullivan 2.2 here. He talked about whether or not Russia will comply. He mentioned that we have the burden of proof. I absolutely agree we have the burden of proof. We are going to show you how you can reasonably believe that Russia would definitely comply with our plan. I'd like to mention, though, on a preliminary comment, they read no evidence saying Russia would reject a cluster munitions treaty. They read no evidence saying Russia would not comply or that Russia could not afford it. My second response, though, is really to give you a piece of evidence fulfilling our burden of proof. This is from Human Rights Watch in 2009. This is, quote, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs Ministry's press release also noted that Russia admits that the use of cluster munitions in the course of armed conflicts in recent years has had serious negative consequences, adding that if the Geneva negotiation process results in agreements on cluster munitions, we will be prepared to undertake commitments that they would involve. Unquote. Now, the Geneva negotiation is what resulted in the draft protocol that we are passing through our affirmative plan. Each of our mandates are directly drawn from that draft protocol, and Russia came out and said in an international setting from their Ministry of Foreign Affairs that they would comply with the specific draft protocol of our plan. So essentially, word for word, our mandates, Russia has said they will comply. Let's move on to the next issue, of verification. My first response is that we just read evidence from Russia's Foreign Ministry of Affairs saying that they will comply with this treaty. The negative team read no evidence saying Russia would not, or really didn't provide any reason as to Russia wouldn't want to. Let's move on to the justifications here. Now, the first response under the justifications, he said, we're not using cluster munitions. I have a couple of responses. First of all, there was no evidence at all read by the native speaker saying that we're not using them anymore. The fact is, in some of our most recent conflicts, such as Iraq, we have been using cluster munitions. It is current military policy, and that's my second response, to use weapons that cannot be aimed. That is the problem. It's our military policy to use an indiscriminate killer. That's what we need to fix through an affirmative plan. Lastly, he talked about how clearance is required, how we're removing old weapons from previous cluster munitions. That's great, but that fundamentally misses the heart of the issue, which is our plan text, which is right now, in Russia and the United States, both of us have arsenals of millions of weapons that cannot be aimed, bombs that cover the size of several football fields that cannot be aimed and that often fail. There is no reason for this. It's bad for our national security, it's bad from a humanitarian perspective, it's bad for our international image. So we take a step back and we say from our national interest, from Russia's national interest, we should both. We have a moral obligation to upgrade to the better sensor-fused weapons. Thank you, and now I'm open for questions.
All right. Is ready? All right. Hey, Lydia, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's got a lot of questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, let's talk about the updated cluster munitions. Now, how long have these been being used by the international community?
We first started the sensor-fused weapons.
Yeah.
We tested them in Iraq, and they have not caused a single civilian casualty to date.
Okay, so if they haven't caused any, then why hasn't the United States upgraded?
Essentially, we haven't taken that step to get rid of all of our old. We have 500 million, I believe.
Right, I know.
We haven't undertaken the cost, essentially, just to upgrade.
Okay, I know we haven't, but why specifically haven't we done so?
I would assume it's a cost issue. There's really no other reason that we wouldn't upgrade to a better weapon.
Okay, all right. Now, why hasn't Russia upgraded to these weapons?
There's no international convention right now for them to sign. The negotiation process in 2007 fell through, so they're willing to sign, but there's nothing to sign right now.
All right. Now, you talked about how terrorists hate the United States because we use cluster munitions.
Yes, that would be one of the reasons, yes.
Okay, so you're saying that terrorists hate the United States because we accidentally kill our own soldiers?
No, what I'm saying is that, no, I would assume they wouldn't mind that very much. What I'm saying here is that when we drop some of, especially with the older cluster munitions, but still with the ones that we were using today, when we drop those cluster munitions, they don't always, not all of the sub-munitions explode.
Right.
So essentially they remain behind as landmines.
Right.
And so the country's trying to recover from a war they can't.
Okay.
Civilians are blowing up and they're turning against the United States.
All right, thank you. Now, when was the last time we tested these cluster munitions?
Oh, which form of cluster munitions?
The ones that your plan's talking about.
The sensor-fused weapons?
Yeah.
We have been testing them extremely recently. I believe the State Department in 2010 said they have above a 99% accuracy rate.
All right. Now let's talk about the exporting of cluster munitions right now. Did you read any evidence that the United States and Russia are the only countries that export or sell cluster munitions?
No, they're not the only one. They are the two largest users and exporters of cluster munitions.
Right, so your evidence talked about how they're two largest users. When exactly was this evidence from?
I'm actually not sure. I didn't read the card specifically in my speech. I know the United States has over 50% of the world's cluster munitions.
But is that
I
evidence
believe you
from-
referenced that in the 1AC. The citation might be in one of the footnotes.
Okay, all right. Now, did the evidence specifically say that they are also the largest exporters or just the largest users?
I believe it said users and exporters.
All right, thank you. Now let's talk about the solvency point of international stockpiles.
Sure.
Now you talked about how the United States and Russia upgrading might pressure other countries.
Sure, yes.
Did your evidence talk about how whether or not this would be effective?
Yes, it said we could put pressure. They would see
Right,
that there would be
right, I
no
understand.
reason to hold on to a weapon that the rest of the world
I
has
understand.
faced.
Can I actually get that piece of
Definitely,
evidence?
it's right there.
All right, thank you. Can I take this back to the
Yeah,
table?
that's fine.
All right. Moving on, let's talk about Russia's stance on cluster munitions.
Sure.
Now, the last time Russia used cluster munitions was in 2008, correct?
Yes, that's basically the last
Okay,
time
all right,
they've had
all
a
right,
series of
all right,
calls.
thank you. And then in 2009, they stated that they don't want cluster munitions, right?
They said that they recognize that the weapon has drawbacks and they're open to international treaties on
All right,
this.
so Russia's not using these anymore.
No, that's not what they said. They said that if the 2007 negotiations
All right.
came to an agreement,
Okay,
which
now
they didn't, they would
okay,
sign.
how were relations between the United States and Russia in 2009? They were generally good, right? Because we just pressed the reset button.
Sure, they were pretty good.
All right, thank you for the
All right.